Did you think the monster movies you've seen before were shocking enough? You clearly haven't seen the film I'm about to talk about now. As an epic monster blockbuster of its time, it had a staggering budget of 2 billion new Taiwan dollars. The stunning visual effects were unprecedented. Legend has it that there's a gate to another world on Earth, where various bizarre giant creatures dwell. Until this day, a team searching for their missing comrades in the desert was suddenly caught in a strange sandstorm. All the team members were swept away by the wind and sand. However, upon waking, they were astonished to discover that they were in an unfamiliar desert. There was no howling sandstorm here, but an eerie silence enveloped everything. But they didn't know, a terrifying journey capable of overturning human understanding was quietly beginning. The story takes place a few days earlier, on a dark and windy night, when a sailboat was unexpectedly sailing through the vast desert. The sails fluttered in the wind. Who would have thought that this desert, where no ship should sail, would be witnessing such a strange sight? However, misfortune followed closely behind. A bizarre storm and lightning struck without warning. Captain Jack, the hunter, was frantic, hastily flipping through the ancient book he carried with him, trying to find the source of this unusual phenomenon. After a search, he learned that this terrifying storm was a bizarre manifestation caused by a nearby ancient altar, so the group decided to turn back. But just then, the interior of the sailboat suddenly shook violently, as if being shaken by an invisible force. The crew members investigating the surroundings outside the ship were instantly attacked by a monster. The monsters weaved through the desert nimbly, constantly colliding with the sailboat, causing it to veer off its original course. In an instant, the members on the ship were knocked to the ground by the impact. At the critical moment, Jack quickly grabbed the rope and rushed to the bow to firmly control the wildly spinning steering wheel. Although the sailboat didn't capsize, it was still left with a large hole from the collision. The sailboat lost balance and began to sway violently. As the sailboat crossed a slope, the entire ship flipped 90 degrees and was thrown up into the air. Everyone was terrified, holding on desperately to the ropes, barely escaping disaster. Unfortunately, a member fell because they couldn't grab hold of the rope, instantly pierced through the body by the monster's sharp claws. Meanwhile, the hunter Tony, amidst the chaos, was knocked off balance by a barrel, falling into the desert, becoming the first person stranded in this other world. At the same time, in the unmanned zone of the human world, a team of American Special Forces was searching for the missing squad. At the location where Team B had gone missing, the 10-ton armored HMMWV tire tracks had inexplicably disappeared. It was as if the vehicle had vanished into thin air. Just as everyone was puzzled, a massive black storm suddenly appeared ahead, threateningly approaching them with ferocity. The team members didn't dare to hesitate for a moment, and pressed the accelerator to the floor. They tried to escape the terrifying storm, but the black storm approached them at an astonishing speed, wrapping around them at an incredible speed of 500 meters per second. In the end, they couldn't escape their doom, and within just a few seconds, they were completely engulfed by the storm. At this moment, an ancient stone tablet in the desert suddenly emitted a strange light, with runes flashing with mysterious power in the glow. A shimmering portal appeared ahead, and in the next second, everyone, along with their vehicle, was swept into the time-space rift by a powerful suction. After a dizzying whirlwind, they were transported to a desolate desert. Captain Aaron took out the map and examined it carefully, only to be shocked to find that this desert wasn't on the map at all. Even more bizarre, the terrifying black storm continued to wreak havoc in the distance, showing no signs of letting up. After some checks, all the communication devices they carried had inexplicably malfunctioned. At this point, they were unaware that they had been transported to a completely unfamiliar otherworld. At this time, the soldier on watch noticed something strange, and not far away, they discovered some charred car wreckage. Upon closer inspection, these wrecks belonged to the previously missing Team B. The crew members inside had all been burned to a crisp. The gravel on the ground had been melted into a glassy state by the intense heat. The scene was horrific. Looking at the ground filled with bullet casings, the group speculated that they must have undergone a fierce battle in their lifetime. But strangely, there were no signs of any enemy bodies nearby. Everything felt extraordinarily eerie. In order to uncover the truth, the group had no choice but to drive on bravely, trying to send a rescue signal to headquarters. However, there was no response from the intercom. At this moment, on the hillside in the distance, a figure was quietly observing them. This person was none other than the hunter Tony, who had fallen from the sailboat earlier. He had seen these individuals, who had intruded into the other world through his binoculars. The group hadn't driven far when they saw a pile of enormous skeletons. The massive scale made them realize that they had intruded into an unknown otherworld. At this moment, Tony, standing high above, quickly drew his bow and aimed at them. Immediately, he shot an arrow tipped with red powder. He intended to warn the group to leave this dangerous place quickly. However, he didn't expect to be mistaken for an attacker. The squad members immediately became tense, quickly took up their weapons to retaliate against Tony. By the time they realized what was happening, it was already too late. Suddenly, a violent tremor was felt from beneath the desert, as a massive creature came rolling toward them. At an astonishing speed of 100 meters per second, everyone was terrified, and immediately jumped into their vehicles to escape desperately. Meanwhile, Tony quickly chased down the hillside after them. However, the creature's speed was simply too fast, and in the blink of an eye, it caught up with them. In an instant, it overturned two armored vehicles. One of the armored vehicles, though lucky enough to avoid the first attack, but the creature suddenly charged out, letting out a deafening roar at them. Terrified, Aaron and the team finally saw clearly that it was a gigantic desert triceratops. One lone soldier ran with all his might, and finally caught up with his teammates to return to the vehicle, but before he could catch his breath, the monster flipped the armored vehicle with its tentacle. One soldier struggled to crawl out of the vehicle, but before he could react, the next second, he was pierced through by the creature's sharp horn. The monster lifted the soldier high up, taunting the others. The dying soldier clung to his last breath, and decisively pulled the pin from the grenade on him. He waited for the moment when the beast roared, and quickly threw the grenade into its mouth. However, after a loud explosion, the creature did not sustain much damage. Taking advantage of the giant beast's momentary distraction, the remaining members quickly ran toward the mountains. Tony witnessed all of this, and immediately sprang into action to help. He shot an arrow tipped with a bomb, successfully buying them precious time to escape. Fortunately, the group managed to hide in a cave, temporarily evading the creature's frenzied pursuit. After a fierce exchange of gunfire, the monster finally decided to abandon its attack. As the sun completely disappeared below the horizon, the massive beast gradually sank into the depths of the desert. As night fell, one female soldier in the team broke down from fear, and Aaron hurried over to comfort her. However, she was ambushed by a shadow spider, whose enormous stinger pierced into Aaron's back, and she instantly lost consciousness. At the critical moment, team member Matthew remained calm and fired, accurately hitting the spider's eye, successfully saving Aaron. However, the gunfire acted like a signal, attracting more shadow spiders. Inside the cave, swarming shadow spiders poured in densely. The team members had to abandon the unconscious Aaron and escape hurriedly. In this pitch-black night, the shadow spiders became the absolute rulers. Before long, all the other team members were killed by the spiders. Within the shadow spider's lair, silken cocoons hung suspended in the air. Suddenly, a face appeared from one of the cocoons. It was the previously unconscious Aaron. She seemed to be reborn, struggling to break free from the confines of the silk. The stench of rotten corpses permeated the cave, and Aaron couldn't help but feel nauseous. She trembled as she looked around, horrified to find that all her teammates had perished. She endured her grief, and picked up the medical kit left behind by her teammates. Taking out a flare, she groped for an exit, but she didn't know that the flickering light had already betrayed her position. Soon, a shadow spider crawled over. Following the light, Aaron quickly grabbed an oxygen tank to combine with the flare, and sprayed it toward the shadow spider. The flames instantly engulfed the shadow spider. Aaron ran toward the place where there was light. In her panic, her calf was snagged by the spider's claw. In a moment of peril, she pulled out a row of bullets and threw them at the spider. The bullets exploded instantly under the high temperature. Only then did Aaron manage to break free, stumbling as she crawled out of the cave. Behind her, a swarm of shadow spiders relentlessly pursued her, but as soon as she exited the cave, they halted. Fearful of the sunlight, they could only retreat back into the cave reluctantly, waiting for a chance to strike. Just as Aaron wanted to get up and leave, the intense pain in her foot nearly caused her to fall again. In that moment, she felt a wave of helplessness and despair. Not knowing how long it had been, she gradually calmed down. Then she took off her blood-soaked sock, and retrieved her last bullet. She carefully dug out the gunpowder with her dagger, evenly sprinkling it on her wound. Then gritted her teeth and ignited the gunpowder. After tending to her wound, she pushed herself to climb up to a nearby high point, to observe her surroundings. Aside from the hills beneath her feet, all around was an endless barren desert. She understood that to return to the human world, she must pass through that terrifying black storm. But how to cross this desert became an immediate challenge. Immediately after, she picked up a stone and threw it into the desert, and the next moment, a giant beast emerged at the sound. The triceratops searched around, then returned underground upon finding no prey. Erin had to search for water first, and after much difficulty, she found a water pool. As she approached, she smelled a pungent odor, which turned out to be the urine of the giant beast. She could only continue moving forward. Soon after, she discovered the wreckage of a sailboat, and as she entered the cabin to search for supplies, a dark figure flashed past her from behind. She immediately gripped her dagger in defense, but the shadow suddenly pounced and seized her. It turned out to be Tony. Erin pretended to drop her dagger, and took advantage of Tony's relaxed guard, using a shoulder throw to counter him. Due to the language barrier, the two immediately engaged in a fight. Erin, weakened by her injuries, gradually lost strength, and Tony kicked her in the head, causing her to faint. Tony tied up Erin, planning to leave before sunset. Erin pretended to fall, picked up a stone and concealed it in her hand. As the sun completely set, the ground began to crack open. After taking Erin back to his dwelling, he fetched water and began to drink. Although the cave had a continuous spring, there was scarce food, only a few patches of moss. Suddenly, sounds of a monster echoed in the cave. Fortunately, the cave walls were thick enough to withstand the monster's attacks. It turned out Tony had experiences similar to Erin's, being a hunter from the tribe, attacked by a monster during a hunt. His sailboat was damaged by a large rock, hit by a barrel and stranded in the desert. He was also one of the first to arrive in this strange world. Tony didn't truly want to harm Erin, but their earlier fight made him wary, hence, he became cautious. What sustained him in surviving this world was a firm belief in his heart. Erin took advantage of Tony's praying moment, sneakily retrieved the hidden stone, and began cutting the ropes to plan her escape. The next morning, Tony walked out of the cave as usual, cautiously observing the surroundings. He always hoped to find an opportunity to cross the mysterious black storm and return to his own world. But upon his return to the cave, he discovered Erin had vanished without a trace. In that moment, as he turned around, completely caught off guard, he was suddenly attacked by Erin. He was knocked unconscious with a stick, resulting in a reversal of the situation. Tony was subdued by Erin, and when he regained consciousness, he not only faced Erin's mockery and ridicule, but also had his cherished beliefs destroyed. This completely enraged Tony. His anger erupted instantly, leading to another intense fight with Erin. Both were evenly matched, struggling from inside the cave to outside where victory was uncertain. In the heat of the battle, Tony accidentally rolled down a slope, falling into a nest of shadow spiders. The shadow spiders in the nest quickly gathered upon hearing the commotion. As Tony was about to become their prey, Erin reached out in time and grabbed him. While the spiders inside the cave sensed movement above, swiftly climbing up, Erin exerted all her strength, successfully pulling Tony back to the ground. Then Erin took the initiative, untying the ropes from Tony's body, and handed him her dagger, signaling her goodwill. However, learning from past lessons, Tony remained cautious and guarded, until Erin offered him her cherished chocolate. After taking a bite, he gradually let go of his guard, showing goodwill, and even shared his scant water with Erin. Therefore, the two resolved their conflict, communicating through simple gestures. They discovered that their goals were the same, to cross the black storm. However, on their path lay a huge and fierce triceratops. Tony suggested using the shadow spider's venom to incapacitate the triceratops. Erin found this plan feasible. In the evening, Erin and Tony lurked near the shadow spider's nest, and as night fell, Erin softly sang a song, successfully luring out the shadow spiders. As expected, the shadow spiders fell into the trap they set. Following that, Tony wielded the dragon slayer sword. Leaping down from the mountaintop, he cleaved the head of the shadow spider with one strike, then took another to remove its venomous fangs. Subsequently, the two quickly fled the nest, escaping the danger before the other shadow spiders surrounded them. After returning to safety, Tony extracted the sharpest part of the fang, applying the neurotoxin to his blade. He selected a set of dual blades for Erin, and patiently taught her the ancestral dragon slayer technique in the sunlight. After days of rigorous training, they were fully prepared. They began to execute their plan, first using a mechanism to throw a barrel into the distant desert, successfully diverting the triceratops's attention. While the triceratops was distracted, they immediately ran towards Erin's armored vehicle. However, they underestimated the triceratops's speed. As the beast quickly turned back to retrieve the weapons on the armored vehicle, Tony alone drew the triceratops's attention. At this moment, his object of faith fell to the ground. Without hesitation, Tony went back to retrieve it, and as he picked it up, the triceratops emerged from the ground. Tony calmly took out his bow and arrow, and accurately shot the venom-coated arrow into the triceratops's eye. The venom quickly spread inside the triceratops, yet it seemed to have little effect on its combat abilities. The triceratops swung its tail furiously, nearly knocking Tony down. At a critical moment, Aaron fired a Gatling gun frantically from the side, but couldn't penetrate the triceratops's thick hide. However, the venom slowly began to paralyze it, and Aaron took the opportunity to launch a rocket. However, the triceratops was too formidable, suffering little damage, and charging towards Aaron instead. Aaron was knocked around in the armored vehicle, with the triceratops closing in step by step. At a critical moment, Tony leaped onto the triceratops's head, swinging the dragon slayer sword towards the space between its horns. The triceratops flung Tony away in pain, causing Tony to lose consciousness. The triceratops became even more enraged. Aaron seized the opportunity to shoot a grappling hook. Using the rope's force to reach the triceratops's head, she gripped the dragon slayer sword tightly and thrust downward, driving the blade deep into the triceratops's head. The triceratops thrashed its head against rocks, trying to shake off Aaron, yet Aaron held onto the handle, and with another effort, she drove the dragon slayer sword completely into the triceratops's skull. The triceratops's pupils dilated instantly, then it fell to the ground motionless. Aaron then cut off a piece of the triceratops's silver armor, dragging the unconscious Tony, continuing towards the direction of the black storm. Along the way, they encountered a sandstorm, prompting Aaron to quickly open the survival tent, where they spent the night. The next day, they continued their journey, finally reaching an oasis in the desert. Here lay clear lakes, alongside many herbivorous ankylosaurs. Tony indicated Aaron could safely drink the water, but suddenly, a sandworm emerged. Fortunately, Tony reacted quickly, and cleaved it in two with one strike. The two were worried about not having any food, but this sand dragon allowed them to have a feast. They decided to rest at the oasis for a night, before setting off again. After nightfall, the two were awakened by a huge noise, and saw a fire dragon setting the forest ablaze. The ankylosaurs were threatened, and charged toward the two of them. If they were struck by this gigantic creature, the only outcome would be death. Even if they were lucky enough to survive, they would certainly end up severely injured. Suddenly, a man fell from the sky, and unleashed a powerful ability, instantly clearing a path for them. The momentum intimidated all around, causing the armored dragons to scatter in fear. Aaron quickly responded as well, demonstrating her own skills. She was well aware that armored dragons feared fire, and cleverly ignited a flame. The ankylosaurs dared not approach another step. However, Tony's situation was extremely perilous, as he was pushed closer to the edge of a cliff. Just at this critical moment, a figure descended from the sky, pulling him away from danger. At this moment, many ankylosaurs fell off the cliff in the chaos. It turned out that these timely arrivals were all relatives of Tony. Aaron was filled with confusion, and asked the man how he had crossed into this world. To her surprise, Tony's chief could speak fluent English, but before she could ask more questions, the chief suddenly punched her, knocking her unconscious. When Aaron woke up, she found that she had been imprisoned. However, she soon discovered a flaw, and quickly used a stool to break the iron lock. She entered the lower room, which seemed to be a kitchen. Aaron was preparing to grab a kitchen knife for protection. Tony suddenly appeared, and took her to meet the chief. The chief was none other than the previous captain, Jack. After Tony's explanation, everyone realized it was all a misunderstanding. Jack informed Aaron that their goals aligned, and they were all headed to the Heaven Tower on the distant mountain. The reason Aaron was drawn into this world was due to the operation of the Heaven Tower. The Heaven Tower is a relic of an ancient civilization, where the technology is extremely advanced, but also harbors great dangers. It is said that the ancients could freely traverse between two worlds, but later they were undone by the very technology they created, leading to the collapse of their entire civilization. However, the passage the ancients used to connect the two worlds has remained. It uses magma as its energy source, and opens at irregular intervals by controlling lightning. Aaron and her fellow Special Forces soldiers weren't the first group of humans to be transported here. This also explains why Jack spoke their language. Their mission this time is to close this passage. But the ancients had domesticated a group of extremely powerful guardian fire dragons near the Heaven Tower. These fire dragons are massive, with tough and sharp shells, and only expose their weaknesses when they breathe fire. After the discussion, the next day, everyone equipped themselves with weapons, and set off on their journey with the encouragement of Tony's clan. They climbed mountains and crossed ridges, traversing cliffs, ancient ruins, and waterfalls, enduring hardships along the way, and finally arrived at the foot of the Heaven Tower. At this moment, the sky suddenly began to rain, and two team members spontaneously combusted without warning. Everyone was terrified and hid away. At this moment, the guardian fire dragon of the Heaven Tower appeared. It let out a deafening roar at the group, and then slowly approached their hiding place, opening its mouth to prepare to breathe fire. Jack was the first to raise his large sword and charge at the fire dragon, and then Erin rushed in with her twin blades in hand, under the cover of the explosive arrows shot by Tony. Erin seized the opportunity to attack the dragon from the side, while at the same time, the stone tablets and runes along the road were destroyed. Thunder and lightning erupted from the altar, and a portal opened up. As the dragon turned, Erin executed a swift spin and slashed her blade across its wing. She then continued to restrain the fire dragon. Other hunters rushed in to attack as well. In the chaos, Tony shot another arrow. At the moment of explosion, Erin succeeded in slicing through its skin. However, the fire dragon's defense was beyond imagination, and this strike didn't inflict substantial damage. Erin had to risk attacking the upper chamber of the dragon's mouth. Although this move broke through its defenses, it completely enraged the dragon. The dragon violently flapped its wings, and the tremendous force sent Erin flying. Just as Erin was about to face a fatal blow, the fire dragon breathed out flames. Erin immediately jumped off the cliff to evade. Fortunately, there was a portal opening below her. Erin was unexpectedly transported back to the human world. When she regained consciousness, she was discovered by a search team. After confirming her identity, she was taken onto a plane for rescue. Just as Erin woke up, a streak of lightning tore across the sky, and the fire dragon had come through the portal into the human world. It swiftly lunged at the plane and tore the plane apart in one bite. The plane crashed to the ground. Erin survived the ordeal thanks to the protection of her seatbelt. The armored vehicle squad arrived in time to provide support. They opened fire frantically at the belly of the fire dragon. However, in front of the fire dragon, human resistance seemed so powerless. In just one flame attack, the entire squad was annihilated. The military deployed a tank squad for bombardment, but before the shells could be fired, the tank was crushed under the fire dragon's feet. The transport plane in the sky also couldn't escape its doom. The fire dragon stood on top of the plane, tearing it apart in midair. The shockwave from the plane's crash sent Erin flying several meters away. The landed fire dragon spread its wings, breathing fire and venting its fury. Upon seeing this, Erin suddenly remembered Jack's words. The fire dragon's only weakness is the moment before it breathes fire. Her goal was to destroy the fire dragon's flying ability, and then deliver a fatal blow while it was breathing fire. Erin picked up a small knife and slashed a huge gash into its wing. The fire dragon roared in anger, opening its mouth to prepare to breathe fire. This was the opportunity Erin was waiting for. She quickly ignited a bomb and shot it into the dragon's mouth with her crossbow. At the moment the bomb detonated, a chain reaction occurred with the flames inside the fire dragon. The fire dragon was severely wounded and thundered to the ground. Just as Erin thought victory was within reach, the fire dragon surprisingly struggled to stand up again, letting out an angry roar. It was about to launch a final attack on Erin. In this critical moment, a shell struck the fire dragon. Tony, who arrived just in time, shot several arrows at the fire dragon. The last arrow precisely struck the fire dragon's vital point. The flames inside the fire dragon were ignited, triggering a chain explosion. Finally, it was completely defeated, but everyone barely had time to celebrate when the black storm reappeared. Amidst the thunder and lightning, the dark clouds churned, opening a portal to another world once again. The black corrosion dragon atop the tower also came into the human world through the portal. At the end of the film, the hunters stood ready once more, launching the ultimate battle against the dragon. They have been guarding the other world for generations, and must not allow these giants to invade Earth. This time, whether they can successfully complete their mission again. The film comes to an end. The movie, with its grand worldview and stunning visual effects, creates a fantastical beast hunting world. The film faithfully recreates the game in its scene and monster design, evoking nostalgia for players. Even non-players can be drawn in by the thrilling battles. However, there are obvious shortcomings in the plot, and the character development is superficial. The motivations and emotional shifts of the characters are too abrupt. However, its innovative attempts in the monster genre are commendable, bringing a sensory adventure experience to the audience. If you enjoy my channel, please subscribe to it.